this Japanese pragmatics workshop, we will learn about Japanese interactional particles used at the beginning, middle, or end of a sentence, which help us to build better relationships and be more active conversation partners. Let's listen to some examples.
そうですよね。
よくね、いい感じになってる人たちが。
そうですね。そういう主人公と違ってですね、こうなんだよなっていう女の子なんです。たかがいかないんですよね。もう毎回こうやって驚いてますから。
こっちも足を使うんだ。足をどうやって？逃げるんだよ。
In the last video, we learned that the Japanese language is organized around the experiencer. In this video, we will learn about how this impacts the Japanese language through interactional particles. We'll talk about marking common ground with ne, non-shared information and feelings with yo, and lastly, marking information or feelings that aren't shared yet but still has potential common ground with yo ne. Before starting, let's talk about intonation. The melody of language is called prosody, and this, along with grammar, relates to how we express feelings. For example, if a person's voice goes up at the end of an utterance, it can mean they're unsure or asking a question. If a person's voice goes down at the end of an utterance, it can mean they're finishing their statement. Using Japanese particles with different intonations creates different meanings. Generally speaking, a rising pitch indicates uncertainty on the part of the speaker or implies that they are asking for a response. Falling pitch, on the other hand, signals a statement or might mean that the speaker doesn't expect a response. For instance, if I say, "You're coming?" with a rising intonation, this is a question, and the speaker is showing that they're uncertain. If I say, "You're coming," with a falling intonation, I'm making a statement that doesn't necessarily require an answer. In Japanese, there is another pitch pattern called flat. Generally, this flat intonation isn't a question. The first particle we will talk about is ne. Ne is the most frequently used particle in ordinary conversation. It indicates and establishes common ground on shared ideas, feelings, and experiences. Ne seeks your conversation partner's supportive response and involvement in the conversation. The core concept of ne is represented by the tsukoba on the left-hand side. The circle on the left represents the speaker, and the circle on the right represents the listener. The dark color represents the shared common ground, as both speaker and listener have the same feeling or opinion towards something. The arrow represents the speaker's attention, pointing towards the addressee and then back to themselves. The first example is ne with a rising intonation, which can be used to request confirmation. If you realize that it's already 5 o'clock, the time conversation practice ends, you can say,
もう5時ですね.
with a rising intonation to ask a question and get the listener's attention. The second example is also ne with a rising intonation to request confirmation to meet next time. For instance, if an APU buddy suggests 3 o'clock by saying,
明日の3時はどうですか?
you can confirm the time by responding with ne using a rising pitch, such as,
3時ですね.
Before the third example, let me introduce one tsukoba that represents subjective construal in Japanese. There's Ken, who's enjoying a meal alone and says,
おいしい.
This spontaneous reaction doesn't have any final particles because it's self-addressed speech. No interaction is anticipated, so there's no need for interactional particles. Now, Ken is eating with his friend Kanako. He says,
おいしいね.
with a falling or flat intonation. This type of ne often indicates or establishes common ground on shared ideas, feelings, and experiences. Ne is an interesting particle because however it is uttered, it always elicits a response. It is designed to pull your listener in, like the arrow on the tsukoba. In Kaneko's reply, she says,
そうだね.
with the falling or flat intonation, sharing in a nice feeling of agreement. In real conversations, ne can be used for a variety of functions. Here are two Japanese speakers from Pittsburgh who are visiting Atlanta in March. It can be used at the beginning, the middle, or the end of an utterance. Let's listen.
アトランタって本当にいいところですね。
ねえ、あったかくてね、やっぱりね。
Ne has one core meaning of shared effective common ground, which means a cooperative agreement to have a conversation. Ne has many different functions. Some of them are listed here, including requesting confirmation, introducing a new topic, getting attention, asking or requesting agreement, and marking intimacy. Next, let's learn yo. Yo marks feelings, warnings, advice, and information that the listener doesn't already know about. Yo is often used among friends and family members and rarely with a socially higher person. The reason for this is that it's generally not cool to tell your superiors that they don't know stuff. By using yo with a rising pitch, the speaker shares information that they think their listener doesn't know. The tsukoba on the left-hand side represents the core concept of yo. The circles are different colors to show that the speaker and the listener don't have the same knowledge. The arrow indicates the speaker's attention, with yo sending this new information to their listener. Here we have Ken enjoying his snack by saying,
おいしい.
This also has no final particles. This relates to the tsukoba, which represents subjective construal in Japanese. Sometimes people do talk to themselves by using final particles, but yo isn't used because there's nobody to tell anything to. Here, Ken is enjoying his food and Kanako passes by at that moment. He tells Kanako how good it is by saying,
おいしいよ.
そう。
When sharing information, yo is often used with a rising pitch, drawing the listener's attention and inviting their participation. When sharing information, yo is often used with a rising pitch. It draws the listener's attention and invites their participation. Kaneko can pay attention to what she's learning from Ken. Here, rising intonation isn't a question, but it has a similar function of inviting participation. Maybe Kaneko will want to try the same snack. In this example, Ken notices that it's raining outside and Kaneko is about to go outside. Ken says she should bring an umbrella.
あ、傘持って行った方がいいよ。
そう
Here, Ken is sharing information that Kaneko doesn't have. She hasn't noticed the weather. Using yo marks Ken's understanding of Kaneko's perspective that she doesn't know that it's raining. The rising intonation invites her participation. So what do you do if your superior is in the same situation? You might want to say the same thing, but instead you would say, 傘がありますか? Or 傘持って行った方がいいかもしれませんよ. Any of these will work. The main thing with yo is to avoid overusing it so you don't sound bossy. Let's look at another example. Kaneko asks if she can use Ken's umbrella. Ken answers with
いいよ。
Ken answers using yo with a rising pitch. Now let's look at an example that uses falling pitch.
じゃあケンの車乗ってもいい
ダメだよ。
Here, Kaneko asks to use Ken's car, and his no is non-negotiable. It could also sound rude or playful depending on the context and relationship. Before moving on to yone, let me talk about the phrase desyo, which is often used with a falling intonation. Desyo or undayo are common in storytelling or providing information while answering a question. In this case, it has less of an imposing tone and is more informative, which means it can be used both casually or politely depending on whether you choose des or da. Research has shown that yo is common in casual conversations, especially used in combination with another expression like desyo or yone. Here's a real conversation example from an interview with a college student. The topic was my scary experience, and in this conversation, a Japanese college student shared her experience using the desyo construction 3 times. She uses it to mark background information like, we really enjoyed talking, I looked through the peephole, and there was a buffet. By using desyo, the speaker was able to convey the context of her story in a friendly and approachable way. Here it is in Japanese. Let's listen.
カナダに1ヶ月間留学に行ってたんですけど、ホームステイに。その時に、どこに行ったのかな、どっか出かけたんですね。で、友達と2人でホテルにいて、そしたらお話がすごい盛り上がったんです、2人で。日本人なんですけど、その友達が。で、日本語ですぐお話しして盛り上がってたら、急にドアを叩く人がいて、でもうるさいみたいな感じで、もう熱い英語でなんか言ってるんですけども、それが怖くて、フロントに電話しようとしたぐらい、もうずっと10分ぐらいずっとどんどん叩かれてて、でそれを見たんですよ、穴から顔を見て、やばいと思って、でもそれから開けずに、扉を開けずに、でそしてたらもう収まって帰ったんですけど、その次の日が朝バイキングだったんですよ。でそこで昨日の人がいて、でもあっちは私たちの顔知らないのでよかったんですけど、それが一番怖かったです、今までで。結構夜遅く。
You may not have learned this in your Japanese language classes, and you may have noticed while enjoying manga or anime that some Japanese language choices can tend to sound feminine or masculine, and that applies to 2 versions of desyo, and they are noyo and undayo. In this case, when storytelling or explaining something, noyo is associated with more feminine speech, while undayo is used more in masculine speech, but it's also neutral sounding among young people. So to summarize, yo has one core meaning of non-sharedness. As you can see here, yo has a lot of different functions which include marking conviction, giving advice, warning, and marking for attention. The third interactional particle that you will learn today is yone, which combines the usages of both yo and ne. Yone expresses the speaker's opinions or feelings while also inviting agreement or confirmation from the listener. Yone allows the speaker to actively engage with the listeners by confirming and/or elaborating on opinions or feelings. Because ne is included, yone can't be used to describe something that the listener has no prior knowledge of. Look at the scoba on the left-hand side, which has similar but not identical colors. Both are gray, but the circle on the right is lighter. This indicates that the speaker thinks that their listener might share their viewpoint. Similar to ne, arrows indicate the direction of attention, pointing to the listener and then back to the speaker. Let's break this down and look at some examples. The first example is yone with a rising intonation. The example is an informal conversation between me and my friend, in which I ask her to confirm the location of my glasses using the particle yone. I receive confirmation from her after using yone.
昨日メガネここに置いたよね。It
is important to note that in this context, neither ne nor yo can be used in place of yone without sounding unnatural. If ne is used, it sounds unnatural as if both me and her have already shared the information. If yo is used, it still sounds unnatural because I, the person searching for the glasses, have information that she does not have. Another particle option here is kana, but we will talk about that another time. This highlights the diverse functions of these particles and their significance in developing interactional competence in Japanese. Here's another example where two girls are talking about their favorite singer.
イケメンだよね。そうだよね。
そうだよね is commonly used to emphasize agreement, stronger than そうだね. Here's an example from another college student interview. Keiko is interviewing Taro about his hometown, Ueda City in Nagano.
近いですか？いや、全然遠いですね。白馬は長野県の北の端、北西の端かな？北西の端で、そうですよね。上田は東の方なんで。あ、はい。大きい県ですよね。とっても。縦に長い。そうですよね。
In response to Keiko's question, Taro uses ne to confirm how far Ueda is. Then Keiko agrees using yone, desu yone, and so desu yone. After Taro's explanation that Hakuba is located in the northwest, whereas Ueda is in the east, Keiko expresses her opinion that Nagano is such a big prefecture with yone. This utterance triggers Taro's agreement with so desu yone. The definitions of our three core concepts are given here. Using these concepts, observe Japanese people talking and see how they use these particles, and try them out yourself. Your Japanese will sound more natural and interactive as a result. Remember, in this new way of teaching, we have seen lots of visuals along with new concepts. In order to feel comfortable with new notions, you will get the opportunity to verbalize these concepts in your own words for homework. Feel free to rewatch the video or look at the summary handout. The goal is to learn the concepts, not memorize a new set of rules. I hope you enjoyed learning ne, yo, and yone with some helpful visuals. Good luck with your Japanese conversation practice with your APU buddy.